co-hosted by Korea Health Industry Development Institute and North Chungcheong Province and sponsored by Ministry of Health and Welfare. Welcome to BioKorea 2020 Invest Fair. I am Park Seo-jin, today's MC. Today's event is to share pharmaceutical, bio, and healthcare companies' core technology, as well as share their strategies and vision to potential investors. Today's presentation will be held by Neuroventi. Neuroventi is focusing on autism therapy because there is no clear therapy so far. And in order to come up with autism spectrum disorders therapy, it is conducting preclinical trial tests. The details will be explained by President Shin Chan-young of Neuroventi. Good to see you, President Shin. From now on, please begin the details of Neuroventi.
Hello, I'm President Shin Chan-young of Neuroventi. Thank you for providing me an opportunity to introduce my company, first of all. Nowadays, you must have a lot of worries about the coronavirus outbreak, right? The main reason for that is currently there is no clear antibody, no clear vaccine, no clear cure. So even if you go to see a doctor at a hospital, the doctors can't really do anything for you. The same applies for development disabilities because there is no clear cure. And the most representative example for development disability is autism, and so far there is no clear cure. So we want to come up with a autism therapy. So we are working on our R&D. Now I'll begin introducing about my company. I myself is CEO of the company, and I'm professor at Konkuk University Graduate School of Medicine. And based on the 15 years of research in this field, I published about 210 SCI reports. And I also have patents about autism-related therapy. And with my past experiences in the academia and interacting with the government authorities, I am confident that I'm in a position to do well in this field. And our company was established in 2015, and we get a lot of seed fund from venture capitals, and also we are getting sponsorship from Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy, as well as Ministry of SMEs and Startups. And these are the four core major shareholders. I am CEO, and then there is Professor Chung Jae-hoon, who is Dean of Samyuk University School of Pharmacy, and he is a very renowned authority of central nervous system and pharmacology and side effects. And then here is Professor Yu Jong-un. He was Dean of Kyunghee University School of Pharmacy, and he's from KFDA, as well as he has background experience back in Korean Intellectual Property Office. And here, Professor Han Seo-hee, he is a dementia and other neurology related experts, and he is working on commercializing TF. So these four are the entrepreneurial team members. And then for those board members, they cover molecular mechanism, medical, chemical, clinical, and AI big data. So we're in partnership with many specialists as well as professors. So now I'll briefly introduce the definition of autism. Autism is one of the most representative form of this development disability, and it shows repetitive abnormal behaviors, and if it becomes serious, then children can't talk, and it can be followed by ADHD or depression, paranoia, or even epilepsy, among other diseases. And the symptoms are so diverse that it is very difficult to come up with a therapy. About 15 to 20 years ago, it was classified as a rare disease because 1 in every 10,000 children suffered from autism only. But over the recent years, the number of patients and the rate of patients drastically increased. In the United States, about 1.85% are patients, and in Korea, about 2.64%, which means 1 in every 40 to 50 children suffer from autism, which is a very high portion. And in terms of treating them, the cost spent is almost 1/3 of Alzheimer's disease therapy. So in overseas, almost 1/3 of the R&D costs sent to used for Alzheimer's disease is used for autism therapy, but in Korea that is not the case. As I mentioned earlier, there is no clear therapy for autism. So there were a lot of trials to come up with an autism therapy, and many people try to apply those therapy for other mental disorders or depressions or ADHD or among other diseases. They all failed, and so far there is no clear therapy to deal with autism. So how much do we need autism therapy? Can be explained on this slide. There is an agent called belivectin, which is developed by Roche. It was mainly but being developed for another purpose. However, they learned that maybe they could use this for autism therapy, and they conducted a study on 200 people. And from the United States FDA, they designated this as a breakthrough therapy. Since this is an innovative drug, they provided an incentive to come up with this therapy. And on the last line, there is an interesting thing that vasopressin takes a leading role of secreting hormone for animals' mating behavior, so it's a deterrent. And last year, there was a very famous journal called Science Transitional Medicine, and it indicated that this vasopressin could be used as an autism therapy. And later, researchers from Mount Sinai published another research, and they said that vasopressin enhancer can be used for an autism therapy. That sounds strange, right? A group of researchers say we should suppress it, while another group of researchers say we should enhance it. Those different perspectives were published on the same journal. However, the US FDA approved both of them. And typically, not but those pathogenesis, undefined medicines cannot be used as a cure. However, we're in a desperate need to find an autism therapy. That is why both of them were recognized as a possible therapy. And there is a company called Yano Pharmaceuticals, and they were developing L179, and likewise, they were designated as a fast track. However, the pathogenesis is undefined, so this indicates that the United States is feeling a desperate need to come up with an autism therapy. The market status quo is currently calculated as a 2 to 3 trillion won, and it is expected to grow to 4 to 5 trillion won. This is a rather conservative estimation because only the behavioral therapy itself is forming about 4 trillion Korean won per year in the United States. So likewise, under the circumstances where there is no clear cure, so if someone comes up with a clear autism therapy, then the market size will skyrocket. In order to come up with the autism therapy, we may need a lot of various approaches. So we could come up with a targeting approach and segregating strategy of patients. Then we have to define what kind of characteristics they have. So we came up with this strategy. So this strategy to target groups was could be made use for animal clinical trials as well as people, and by defining those pathogenesis to come up with the definition and the characteristics. And on the other hand, we could use big data or AI to come up with agents. Nowadays, those good medicine not only has one target, but they can take multilateral targets to come up with excellent efficacy. This is called multi-target approach. So we Neuroventi also, in order to come up with an autism therapy, we target and we control various targets to increase efficacy while decreasing side effects. And we used this sun metaphor, and when sunlight penetrates the prism, and the lights can be divided into these rainbow colors. So, namely, autism does not have only one single trait, but it can be divided into various characteristics. So it's a spectrum syndrome. So one autism therapy cannot be used or cover the entire autism patients. So based on this diverse group patients, we can cure them with this approach. So there are diverse targets. So as I have mentioned before, thanks to this multi-target drug development, we can control these different characteristics based on our approach. So we're working on this R&D, and in fact, the FDA, if you take a look at those history of approvals, then not only singular approach, but those multi-target drugs account for 30% of the entire approvals. So nowadays there is growing attention for these multi-approach. So recently for donepezil or statin for hyperlipidemia, when we conducted those research, then instead of targeting only one symptom, taking multilateral approach to control different symptoms at the time is more efficient. So based on that, we are taking an approach to develop a multi-target approach agent. Here are our strengths. When it comes to central nervous system or CNS disorder, we come up with in vitro and in vivo facilities in our company. In-house, we can deal with our efficacy tests. And we have those efficacy test facility, and we can analyze those research. And also, in terms of combining new chemicals, and we can see how good it is in terms of absorption, distribution, or metabolic activities. Then from now on, let's begin with our main pipeline. This is autism animal model developed by our own, and we use various animal models, and this is a VPA animal model. Already, other researchers have quoted our paper about 170 times, and based on the model's characteristics, we can find out candidate agents. Over the 15 past years of pathology research, we found out the characteristics, and the most renowned characteristics is that excitatory neural activity is more commonly found compared to inhibitory neural activity. So we had this air balloon metaphor as a theory. So when there's overexcitement or overly inhibited, then children can show autism. So based on this, if we reduce those over reactions, then probably we can mitigate the symptoms of autism. So we began our research. And while we were searching for a proper agent, we've paid attention for agmatine. This agmatine can be found in our human body, and it has various characteristics to control neural activities. It can deal with ion channel or nitric oxide combination activity, as well as polyamine, so it can control overactivity of our neural systems. And also, it can deal with brain inflammation, or it can deter the death of the neurons. So it has a lot of strengths. And based on this, we can deal with depression or various neural diseases. So many people are paying a lot of attention on this, and we wanted to find out if this could be used for autism therapy. If you take a look at the graph, 2 years ago, we learned that there was low density of agmatine in those autism patients. Agmatine can be found in the human body, but we shouldn't consume it too much because of absorption problem, and there could be a lot of side effects. And what matters the most is that we should only increase the density of agmatine in the synapse in order to minimize the side effects and to increase efficacy. And how to increase the synapse density? People focused on those depression therapy, which is metabolic enzyme control. So if you successfully deter this, then the density in synapse will increase, right? We do have that kind of enzyme, and we call that agmatinate. And if we deal with it, we came up with a enzyme deterrent, which is pipeline 01. And based on this, we wanted to figure out if this is efficient. We have secured this animal model. This is the actual data, and we make use of agmatine. to see if it can deal with social deficits or repetitive behavior or hyperactivity or seizure based on our research, and we secured this result. And as I have mentioned, based on the agmatin inhibitor, we can deal with social impairment if this would recover, or we can deal with calcium. This neurotransmitter increases calcium, but if we can deter this, and we conducted a study, and as I have mentioned, thanks to this study, we could see that it could deal with social deficits, repeated behavior, and seizure, among others. And even animals, in order to communicate, they use ultrasonic wave, and those communication was hardly found from autism patient animals. So if you take a look at this graph, communication level decreased from autism patients, but when we administered the number one agent, then it recovered as usual. And also we conducted various studies on other animals as well. This one is PK data. When we administered this on animals, if it's absorbed well, or their brain functions well, or if it delivers to some specific parts of brain well. So this shows the data of that research. And what kind of characteristics these agents have is shown from this graph. And 4 weeks or in 13 weeks consecutive administration is shown here, and wanted to see if this agent is safe based on this research. And there is this thing called NOAEL. The safety level is 10,000 milligrams per kilogram, which means if you observe a lot of this, then it's still safe, according to this animal trial. So with this agent 1, it is already efficient and safe, but in order to come up with a better one, we wanted to optimize this through lead optimization research. We combine goods and seek for better efficacy. So these new agents, compared to the 01 compound, are showing a better efficacy based on our research. So far, I have mentioned the target-oriented research and the results. And next, let's move on to the next one. We wanted to find out our new agents based on our big data. So on the left, it shows the analytical scheme. So based on the autism patient big data on people and animals, and wanted to see what kind of agents work better. And we have detected various agents, and among them, we selected 3 agents which are used for clinical trials. And we learned this pre-data indicating that it can be used to autism. We named it A01, A02, and A03. As for A01, as shown on the right graph, from various animal models, we found out that this could be used for autism therapy. As for A02, this is already used for clinical trials. It is used for Parkinson's disease therapy, and this may have efficacy on autism, and we have confirmed it from animal tests. Since it is already used for clinical trials already, from this autumn this year, we're about to begin our second clinical trial. So we're keep working on this research. Already, the efficacy and low side effects is confirmed. Third one is similar. A03 is used for hypertension treatment, and this also may have efficacy on treating autism. And based on various candidates, we selected these 3 based on our big data. So working on additional research. So I have discussed our pipelines, and let's move on to which stages our pipelines are. And based on the targets, we combine new agents and their preclinical goods. So within 1 or 2 years, if those preclinical research finishes, then we will move on to clinical trials. those A01, 02, 03 based on our big data. Especially specifically for A02 compound, it has no toxicity and it is already used for clinical trials. Therefore, additionally, this year, sometime in autumn, researchers will lead the beginning of the second clinical trial. So, of course, the beginning was a little bit slow, but compared to other pipelines, the researching speed is really fast, so we can provide help to autism patients as well as their parents. So we are keep working on the R&D. We, Neuroventi, as I mentioned before, we are getting government-supported projects as well as getting seed capital and money from venture capital companies. So we are keep struggling and mustering our efforts to develop these pipelines, and by increasing its efficiency, we may probably come up with an autism therapy and boast Korea's biopharmaceutical strengths. So we will keep striving to do our best. Thank you.
We have listened to Neuroventi's presentation, which is working on autism therapy. For those investors who are seeking to find the companies with a high chance to success, I wish it was a meaningful time. Thank you, President Sin, for your presentation. A channel that matches investors and companies, I wish this opportunity could open a new door for those pharmaceutical companies to advance to the future. Thank you for your attention.